So let's get started with this presentation. So for the next 20 minutes, I will try to explain to you why we have sales and selection tools and how they make the complex selection of products simple and what goes on behind the scenes in a really high level to give an overall introduction. First off, just a little bit about Johnson Controls, where I'm from. My name is Simon. I'm responsible for our sales and selection tools. And as mentioned, I'm from Johnson Controls. We're a rather large company, mainly focusing in what is called building solutions. And I'm from the department with heating and cooling, which is what represent under the Sabo brand. So this is a question I get asked quite often. Sales and selection tools, why do we need them and why do we have them? So from my perspective, our selection tools is our storefront. This is where we showcase our product. This is where we create our simplistic way of selecting the products. This is where we create our transparent platform, where we show all our key values. This is a place where you can evaluate the total cost of ownership, but also first cost. And this is where we ensure that you get a consistency and high quality solution. Another element is that the sales and selection tool provides a link between all the products and the client demand. We have, at least in our portfolio, a wide range of products. I've been with Johnson for plus 10 years, and I still sometimes struggle to.
Well, it's very quiet.
Okay. Is that better?
Should be better.
Okay, fine. We have a really broad product portfolio with a lot of different options for a lot of different applications. And sometimes it can actually be a bit confusing to figure out which product is the perfect match for my specific need. That is why we have the tools. They are meant to simplify this selection, meant to take away some of the complexity. As an example, I have brought along one of our products, which we call this as a standard product, one of our high runners where everything is configurable. But it's still, if we dig into the levels of what we call a chill pack, there are 18 different compressors. On the condenser side, we have a lot of different models to choose from, depending on flow, pressure, etc. And all in all, if you sum up all the options, it's a really nice number. I think it's what we call 1 trillion options. So if you manually had to go through all these steps, it would take forever. But since we have these sales and configuration tools, there's no need to manually test out all the options. The tools are designed so you simply give your demand to temperature and capacity, and then it configures something based on the requirements to the installation, rather than testing out all the other elements. And the reason why we have so many different options is simply because if there's a large variation in flow or temperature, we need a small heat exchanger, a big heat exchanger, etc. with the compressors. Sales and selection tools are also a way for us to get market feedback and make sure that we adapt to feedback. So the way that we develop our tools is that with all development projects, we start out with a single component test in our R&D lab. Then where I'm from in Holme, we have a rather large test facility where we can do single test components, so we make sure that all the math and physical models are correct, and we adjust the models as we own the models ourselves. Then we also test complete systems to see when we mix option A, B, and C, does it give something different than we thought, and what is missing in our model? Then we include that into the model. And then when we have confidence in our model and our selection, we release it to market and into our sales and selection tools. Of course, then it's always the case when a user gets and a sales team gets our tools into their hand, we find out something is missing or something is behaving different than intended. So therefore, we do continuous upgrades and updates. We do that both on the basis of what we call end-of-line testing. Since all the chillers leaving the Sabo factory are end-of-line tested, that data is then compared to our models. We also adjust our selection routines based on market feedback. So Tommy earlier talking about the pinch temperature, like how close approach do we want to go to market with? Is it 2, 3, or 4 Kelvin? Then we can adjust the routine to make sure that the selection we are providing is adequate according to market demands. Then, of course, also we constantly improve our products. That is also fed into the models. So we have this continuous optimization, and mechanical, we call it continuous automation. And in software, this will be part of the DevOps, where development and operation are linked close together. How do we do this? In reality, what you're seeing here, this is a schematic of the calculation core that we use inside our selection tool. We call this a functional diagram, meaning that the functions, see to get it to point. No, this one. It's really hard to see. But the functions you can see on the diagram, just go. You can see we start out with a compressor, a heat exchanger, and an evaporator. There we basically have a placeholder for the mass for each of the components. And in some cases, it's a piece of mass from a supplier. In this case, the evaporator is actually from Alfa Laval. It's just on the stage. So we are communicating with Alfa Laval and their tool to say, how does this specific system perform? And then the tricky part is to get all of these components to agree on, basically, we say, if we move to the next slide, if you imagine all these components driving around in a roundabout, all these components have to agree on how fast should we be driving and how much throttle should we be giving in order for us to not hit each other. That is what we're doing behind the scenes, making sure that when the compressor is running at 1800 RPM, it's providing a certain mass flow. What is the pressure loss through our piping? Is the oil separator big enough? Yes, no. The condenser, what will the temperature approach be when it's in a fixed size? And similar to the evaporator. So we need to make sure that all these components are aligned and agree on how fast we are driving in this roundabout. And that's the tricky part of doing these sales and selection tools, is that we, from a Johnson perspective, we sell complete systems. So all the components have to be aligned and they have to agree on what's going on. From a user perspective, this is how it looks. We tried to, again, simplify it a lot. So the thing you have to specify as a user, that is temperatures and capacity. The illustration here is what we call a port configuration diagram. So you can basically imagine that the thing inside the dotted box, that is the scope of delivery out of the Sabo factory. Everything outside, that is the requirements and demand that you have to the product we have to deliver. So basically the flanges and connection points. So here we have done a case where we say we want to heat up some water from 50 to 70 degrees. We have said that we want the compressor to run full speed by putting in this compressor load at 100% and then cooling down some water from 25 to 20 degrees Celsius. So it's basically just a simple request. I want these temperatures and I just want to see what the Sabo portfolio can do. The next element is then to choose the products you want to test out. We call this a product base, but it's basically a product catalog. So the naming here reflects what you see in our catalog, and also if you go to our booth, the naming convention we use there. It's set up in a way so both experts and new users can use the program. If you're completely unfamiliar with our products, you can simply select the category called Sabo Heat, and then we will try to select all the products we have in our portfolio. They might not also seek, but we will try to configure them to your demands. If you're an expert and you know our products, you can select a node under the model and just say, I want to configure that single node. But again, it's up to you and your preferences, but you can try out all products and see what they do. Here, we have now let the tool configure all the products. As we said, this is about making the tools run in a roundabout at the same speed. So what we're seeing here is the heat pack portfolio configured. All components are now selected. We know how many plates are in the heat exchangers. We know which motor we're having. We know the size of the VSD drive, etc. So this is a fully configured system. And then we show some key values, allowing you to see which system do I actually want to use. And if you get access to the tool, you'll also see an index price in as well, so you can cost compare your systems, which one is the cost optimal and which one is the COP optimal. Then you can choose to say, okay, there are a few of these solutions that I find relevant and I want to compare them and do some additional analysis. You can also do that. Here you can see we're sort of comparing these 3 different options. You can see that they have a different name. And like the heat pack, the first one is a heat pack with a 16-cylinder compressor. The second one is with an 8-cylinder, and then the last one is with a 4-cylinder. And then one of the solutions, it's just with a condenser subcooler, whereas the 2 others have both the superheating, condensing, and subcooling inside the same heat exchanger. And then we just pick one. And now we see we are back at a screen you have seen before. We also use this diagram in our tools to give information on what's going on. And you can basically trace around with your fingers saying this is how the system performs. And you can see all the values. And if you want to adjust, you can of course go back and redefine requirements, like saying I want a different temperature approach, or I have a preference for a motor supplier. You can also add that to your search request and we will configure a product. So to wrap up, what we'll try to do is to make this selection simple by taking the customer demand to a product, saying what our temperature and capacity need. Then we are selecting which product we try to configure. Then we get all these components to agree in a roundabout, showing the viable options. So we're only showing things that will work. And once you have selected a product, you can request prices, DA drawings, 3D models, and all documentations for the systems. This was what I had planned to talk about. Just do a short commercial for my colleagues. They are also doing talks throughout Chilventa. And also, please come by the booth. We have the sales and selection tool with us, so you can get a demo and we can try out your specific operation cases. Thanks for your time and thanks for your attention. Have a good conference.